Virginia McCall, and I think today we'll focus more on the type of ministries you've been involved with.
Okay.
So maybe just to start us off, could you tell us a little bit about what made you first come to join the Presentation Sisters?
When I was a freshman in high school,
This was back in Mitchell, right?
this was in Mitchell,
Mm-hmm.
Notre Dame, which
Mhm.
isn't there anymore.
Right.
So, so when I was a freshman, I knew I wanted to be a sister, but I didn't tell anybody. And it wasn't just that I wanted to, it's like I really felt that that's what God wanted me to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just
Calling.
kept carrying that within me until I graduated from high school and then came right to the convent after that.
Tell us a little bit about some of the ministries you've been involved in.
Well,
over the years.
you know, in our early days, things were different than they are now.
Mm-hmm.
So when I first came to the convent, we were assigned a ministry. We would, in August, we would see a sign posted, a paper posted on the wall
Mm-hmm.
with our names and where we were going. That's how
Oh,
we
right.
found out.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
then 2 weeks later, we were on the road.
And
leaving.
the Mother Superior would make that decision? Or?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so I taught school. I taught from 5th through 8th grade, different years. And I was principal of grade school.
Mm-hmm.
And after that,
So did you feel like you had a calling to do that, or you just did it
no,
because...
we were told.
Right.
We
yeah.
were told what to do. I mean, we didn't have any choice.
Right.
I didn't really have any desire to do anything specific when I came to the convent.
Mm-hmm.
I just came to be a sister.
Okay.
So whatever they had asked me to do,
Sure.
that would be okay.
Right.
But I never felt I was a good teacher.
Okay.
I learned later I'm better with adults
Mm-hmm.
than
Sure.
with children. But so after I had taught for maybe about eight years, then I was involved in pastoral ministry. I was looking for a ministry, and one of the leaders of our community called me and said, "This is the time now that we could look for our own ministries."
Okay.
She called and said, "I have the perfect ministry for you. It's at St. Lambert's in Sioux Falls, and Father Ryan wants somebody that can be with people who are hurting."
Mm-hmm.
So that was my sole job description.
Okay.
And the reason he wanted that was because he had a lot of divorced women in the parish. And he said, "I can't go into their homes, so I need a woman that can do that."
Mm-hmm.
So I met lots of divorced people and started a support group for
Mhm.
divorced at that time. Then about that same time, I was leaving St. Lambert's for various reasons, and there was a job opening in Des Moines, Iowa.
Mhm.
So I went down there to interview for the job. I wasn't sure what it was. I knew it was with divorced people, and that's where I felt called, to be with divorced people. And so I interviewed, and they wanted me. They wanted me to come. However, I would have to work part-time in the marriage tribunal. And then part-time, I could develop support groups.
Mm-hmm.
That's not really what I wanted. I didn't want to work on the tribunal.
Mm-hmm.
But I said, well, let me think about it, and I'll get back to you. And so I came back home, and I had some vacation time coming. So I was living in an apartment by myself. So I got rid of all the furniture, and except the telephone was there, and there must have been a mattress or a bed, because I came home this last evening to sleep, and then I was to leave the next morning. And I had called the phone company and had them disconnect my phone.
Mm-hmm.
However, when I got home, my phone was ringing.
Okay.
And I answered it, and it was somebody from Davenport, Iowa, the Diocese of Davenport,
Mm-hmm.
asking me if I would come there to work and develop support groups in that
Okay.
area.
Mm-hmm.
Just what I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt that was a call. You know, we say we get a call, but I really got a telephone call.
Literal call.
And so I went there, and I worked in Davenport then for 3 years, developing support groups, and that's working with people who are either separated or divorced,
Mm-hmm.
and helping them deal with their pain.
Mm-hmm.
And then I worked 2 years. Then the Catholic Charities director invited me to come to Dubuque, Iowa. So I went there for 2 years. And then at that time, then I was elected to leadership. This was like probably the early 80s.
Mm-hmm.
So then I came back home, was in leadership for 4 years, and then was looking for another position with divorced people.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, I felt that was my call.
Right.
And so I didn't know exactly where to go with that. So I was praying to St. Jude. St. Jude is the patron of impossible cases.
Mm-hmm.
And so I prayed to him. There's a little novena on the windowsill.
Mm-hmm.
So I picked it up and said this little novena, and within less than 5 minutes, I was being paged.
Mm-hmm.
Another call.
Uh-huh.
And so I answered it, and they said, you have a phone call. So
Mm-hmm.
I took the call. And it was a sister that I knew working in Miami, Florida,
Mm-hmm.
with divorced people.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, I've been elected to leadership, and so I need to leave Miami. Can you come and take my place?
Wow.
I said, oh, not really. I don't want to go that far away. That's a long ways away.
Right.
However, make a long story short, I ended up going down there to interview for the
Mhm.
job. I told him, I said, I don't want to come this far, but I'll interview.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was so impressed with the people that I would work with.
Mm-hmm.
It was with Family Life Office, and they were just very fine people. So I ended up going to Miami
Mm-hmm.
and working with divorced. I had support groups from South Miami up as far as Palm Beach.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Almost every night I was out working with divorced people.
Okay. Yeah.
And then while I was there, 2 of the divorced women and myself developed a program called the Wellspring Experience.
Mm-hmm.
And that was for people who are going through separation or divorce, a weekend experience,
Mm-hmm.
to help them heal. It was a very powerful experience, and it is still going
Mm-hmm.
in
Wow.
Miami.
Yeah.
So anyway, then I was there for 9 years,
Mm-hmm.
and again I was elected to leadership.
Okay.
So I was in leadership for 12 years,
Mm-hmm.
and then I didn't know where to go, what to do. I said, well, God always lets me know
Right.
where to go.
Gives you a call.
Right, I get a call. And so I decided I needed to have a sabbatical first.
Mm-hmm.
I had never worked directly with the poor.
Mm-hmm.
So I developed my own sabbatical that I would go around the country to different places working with the poor. I was in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and New Orleans, and New York City,
Mm-hmm.
and Florida, Belgrade, Florida, working with different groups of poor people.
Mm-hmm.
And but one piece of it was to go to Zambia, because we have Presentation Sisters there,
Right. Mm-hmm.
and work with the Zambian people.
Mm-hmm.
So I went there for about a month,
Mm-hmm.
and I was so touched by the poverty that I saw
Mm-hmm.
that I asked our leadership if I could go back there.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were glad to have me go, because we're glad to have people working internationally, and there weren't too many of us
Mhm.
doing that. So I went there, and I've been there for 12 years.
What kind of programs did you develop?
The first thing we did, when I first got there, I worked with a group called Home-Based Care.
Mm-hmm.
And these were people that worked with other people who had, most of them had AIDS,
Mm-hmm.
or they were HIV positive,
Right.
and probably about 90% were. The others had some other kind of serious illness. And so we would go out to people's homes. I partnered with one Zambian woman. We went to people's homes, and we would listen to what was going on in their life, and then if they needed medical help,
Mm-hmm.
then we would send a nurse out to them. If they needed psychological help, we'd send somebody else.
Mhm.
So there were different kinds of assistance that we could provide them.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I got involved in some other things that kept me so busy that I had to discontinue working with home-based care,
Okay.
because I started developing some of my own projects as in a response to the needs
Mm-hmm.
of the people. So one of those needs, the women told me that they had they had written a proposal, sent it to the diocese to get some money to start a sewing project so that they could make school uniforms.
Right.
So I said, okay, we'll start there. So we started a sewing project. We were in a little storeroom that had a little tiny window about this big, and there were six people working in there. I had sent some of them to school to learn to sew. And so we ended up with about 6 people. They were just on top of each other. It was so crowded. Yeah. So then we put up our own building, bought some property, put up a building. And so we had this sewing project. We would go out into the bush and to the schools out there and ask them if they were interested in getting school uniforms. And they were very pleased. The parents were very pleased that they could have a uniform for their children. And however, they were very, very poor. So in time, the rains didn't come, and so people became poorer and poorer. And so they were not able to purchase the school uniforms. We didn't want to compete with the people that were in town.
Right.
And so a year ago, we closed that project. Another project, we sponsored some people. I ended up getting lots of donors through our development office. And so some of them wanted to give money specifically for education.
So these would be donors back here in the
States? Back in the United States, yes. And so I started sponsoring children in school. Some were in grade school, most of them were in high school. And then once some of those students went through high school, they wanted to go to college. So then I would continue sponsoring them in college. I probably sponsored, maybe 8 in college and maybe about 20 in high school over the years. And I have one student, a young woman, who is studying to be a doctor.
Oh, wow.
And we have a family in Ohio that is sponsoring her. Education is the only way that they're going to get anywhere. And so it's extremely important.
And I had read about the fish ponds.
The fish ponds, we started the fish ponds. We bought some property because when I was working with home-based care had different groups in 8 different areas. And I had asked the caregivers to go out to their groups and ask them what they needed. And they said they needed food. And they needed to grow their own food. So, and they wanted to grow their own food, and they said, if you will give us some oxen and some seed, some maize seed, corn, maize, we will work together. So we bought some oxen. Well, we had to buy some property then. They wanted us to keep the oxen until we thought they were ready to handle them themselves. And so we looked around for some property. I had developed a board of Zambian people. And so our board members and I went out, looked at different pieces of property, and found this one right at the edge of town. I lived in a little town called Kaoma. So they were at the edge of Kaoma. And there was a little stagnant pond, a little covered with green algae. And I said, what's this? It was only about this big. And I said, what is this? And they said, well, it's a spring. It's a spring that runs all the time, and they used to have fish ponds here. I said, okay, we'll buy this property. Let's get this one. It was handy, it was nearby, and then I said, we'll open the fish ponds. So immediately we cleared the land. It had grass like that high, and we had to clear the land, and we opened 2 of the fish ponds. They had to dig through a lot of silt and weeds and grass that had developed over the years. And so we had 2 fish ponds. 2 fish ponds today have turned into 11 fish ponds.
Wow.
And a hatchery. We hatch our own fish. And the local trade school brings students out they teach them about fishing, so then they learn from us too. Different groups have come out. Students from Ireland come often to Zambia. At least once during the summer, a different group comes. And so they come out. So different people come to see what we're doing, and then The crops that we raise, we're only on 2 acres of land, so the crops we raise are just little small plots. But we try to show people what we can raise using just compost. We make our own compost. So, and we can make our own compost because we bought some cows, and we needed the manure for the cows. And so one of the things we use the cow manure for is for biogas. We've created a huge underground place to keep the manure and mixed with water, and it runs a stove outside and a stove in the house.
Wow.
And then our farm manager has his own little biogas unit in his house, which we built for him and his family. So that's the fish farm. And right now, I should say, right now, I've just talked to one of the sisters in Zambia and asked her if she can find 4 or 5 of her students who would like to learn how to raise fish. Because we have a new person that's taking my place there. The sister that was there has returned to India that I've been working with. So Sister Lucy doesn't know anything about fish ponds or farming. So I had a Zoom meeting with the director of the fishery department and our farm manager and Sister Lucy, and he's agreed to, for the next 6 months, to teach her everything he knows about raising fish. And I said, well, if you're doing it and we're paying you to do this, I want more people to be involved. So then I I called one of the sisters yesterday, and who teaches in the school, and said, can you find 4 or 5 students for me who would be interested in raising fish?
So you're still very active, even though
Oh, I am. I'm on the phone all the time. I have WhatsApp on the phone, so it's easy. It's easy.
You're up using all the latest technology.
Right. Another one of the projects is a loan fund for women, and it was Dr. Warren Redmond and his wife here in Aberdeen who have totally funded that project, and we've given $100 loans to over 2,000 women in the past 12 years. The requirement is that they're to use the money to develop a small business. And for them, a small business is maybe six tomatoes and a few onions and a few carrots. And that's small business. So it's not like our small business in the United States.
Sure.
But they have to participate in a workshop. We teach a workshop on business skills. Teach them what profit is all about. And just because they earn some money, it doesn't mean it's all profit. So anyway, they have learned that, and some of them have raised enough money to set up their own little store, a building, and purchase more things to sell. One woman has developed earned enough money that she has built 2 little houses that she rents out to people. Some of them say, well, now I could feed my family. Got enough money to feed my family. I can send my children to school. And almost every family in Zambia, especially in Kaluma where I am, have orphans living with them. Their parents have died of AIDS. And so they have even a greater need to feed more and more people and educate more. So the loan fund has helped them.
Well, it's just amazing that you've been able to start all these programs, because I imagine you didn't have a background in developing fish farms.
I know nothing about farming. I knew nothing about farming. I knew nothing about fish.
So how do you go about doing something like that? I mean, how does it get started? Do you talk with
Well, I had some help. On my board, I had someone who was a retired agricultural agent. So each of my board members had some specific skill. And so he pretty much helped us lay out what we wanted to grow. And we hired people that knew farming. And then when Sister Inez came, I was there probably 4 or 5 years before she came and joined me. She's a presentation sister from India. She had a wonderful background. She'd been in Zambia all her life practically,
Mm-hmm.
and all her religious life, and she was about 60 years old. So she had a wonderful experience in farming. She was able to carry on and has done everything on the farm.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Yeah.
she was behind the building of the hatchery. She did all of that. Of course, it's the fishery people that taught us what to do.
Sure.
She was behind. We now have a conference center, a huge big conference room where people come and have workshops.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an income generating for us. We use solar.
Mm-hmm.
We have solar and electricity.
Okay.
In case one more doesn't work, then the other will automatically click in.
So that's a mission there. It's not really a convent or.
No, we have a convent. Our convent's,
Okay.
we used to live right in a convent right next to the church,
Mm-hmm.
but it was such a horrible building with huge big cracks in the walls and the floors that the sisters built their own convent.
Okay.
These sisters that I'm with are from, they're from Ireland and England and India and Zambia.
Mm-hmm.
And they all belong to what's called the Irish Union.
Okay.
They're all under Ireland. Ireland has provinces all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
So Zambia is one of those provinces.
Okay.
And so, anyway, these sisters build a convent,
Mm-hmm.
and I live with them.
The local people there must feel very comfortable working with the sisters.
They do. One of the sisters is a midwife at the hospital, the Zambian one.
Mm-hmm.
Two of them that are there now teach at the school, which has just been turned over to the sisters. It was more of a government school,
Mm-hmm.
but they've asked the sisters to take it over.
Okay.
So now there's two sisters teaching there. Just this year, it's the first year
Okay.
that they've been there. Another one of the sisters started her own project called the Garden of Oneness, which is a very beautiful nature and religious place. It's a holy place.
Mm-hmm.
She offers different kinds of prayer experiences there.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the people I live with and the different jobs that they have.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and Vianney, Vianney is, Sister Vianney, was a nurse, but because of situations that developed many years ago, she developed an orphanage. And at one time had 150 children in 3 locations in town.
Okay.
But now Zambia is trying to look at other ways of raising children rather than in orphanages.
Mm-hmm.
So she only has a few children left.
Your motivation then as a sister when you first joined and then with your work with the divorced and now in Zambia, it's just kind of this desire to help.
Yes, it helped them in need, yes.
Mm-hmm. And how do you put that together with like the more traditionally religious aspects of being a sister, the prayer, just your faith?
There's really not that much difference from what it was in the past, except in the past, this is the time you get up, this is the time you pray, this is the time you eat,
Mm-hmm.
this is the time you go to
Pretty
work.
regimented.
Everything was very regimented,
Mm-hmm.
and now we're much freer
Mm-hmm.
to live our own life and develop our own ministry with others. So I have time in the morning to pray, just like I had when I was teaching.
Mm-hmm.
We have community prayer every afternoon, every evening,
Mm-hmm.
and then of course the work that we do is it's really a powerful experience to
Mhm.
have a poor person come to you that has absolutely nothing
Mm-hmm.
and are in need. If I don't just hand out money,
Sure.
but if there's some way that I can help them,
Mhm.
then I do.
Yeah, as you said, it seems like the emphasis is on making them more sustainable
Right,
and self-sufficient.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So prayer is still very probably even how do I want to say it? For me, prayer is even a more powerful experience because I need to pray to go out, to have the strength and the courage
Mm-hmm.
and all to go out and do what I'm doing. And then I can bring all of that back to my prayer.
Mm-hmm.
So, which I didn't do when I was teaching.
Okay.
just- We had more rote prayer. One of the piece of the ministry that has just developed, or maybe the last 5 years, is we've gotten containers of Kids Against Hunger food.
Mm-hmm.
And we've used that in different ways, but about 2 years ago, a group of two nurses came to my office to see me, and they wanted to know if we could help them in some way. They have a program for children under 5.
Mm-hmm.
So parents bring their children in to get weighed, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what else they do with them, but they said so many of the children that come are malnourished.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you could help us in any way. So that's how we've been using some of the Kids Against Hunger food in the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm grateful to them that they brought that request to us, because we know that it's really helping people that really
Right.
need it.
Yeah.
And they weigh the children, they teach the women how to cook the Kids Against Hunger food.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's rice and soy and
Mm-hmm.
chicken flavor and dried vegetables, and then you just cook it like rice. But
Mm-hmm.
and they know how to cook rice.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so when the children then get to the weight that they're supposed to be, then they just continue. But and the nurses send us a report every month. The last report I received from them, they were helping 150 children.
Wow, that's amazing.
So
And part of that is that they learn how to cook for themselves.
they
then, so
cook the
they're
food.
not just
Then they come back every week then
Okay,
to
sure.
get the food that they
Right,
need for
right.
the week,
Mhm.
because it's not going to help the children unless they have the same thing consistently.
So much of life as a sister is life in a community, so I just wondered how important that was to you. You talked a little bit about working with other sisters.
Right. Well, community life is very important to me. Living alone, I developed community. Like when I was living alone, it was like I was in Sioux Falls and I was in Aberdeen.
Mm-hmm.
And it gave me the freedom to build community with a number of sisters,
Mm-hmm.
rather than maybe just one other person that I
Okay.
would be living with, or
Right.
2 other people
Mhm.
that I would be living with.
Well, good. I think we've covered most of our bases here.
Okay.
So, yeah, I sure appreciate your time.
Thank you for asking me.
Yes, it's wonderful to hear the stories and the details and how much you've done in your life. That's quite
It's been a good life.
amazing. Great. Thank you, sister.
Okay. Thank you, Mark.